Quick disclaimer to all my subscribers. The video you're about to see is intended for final assessment purposes for one of my college courses that I am attempting to complete that will go towards my dual masters in both emergency management and homeland security. Not all facts or details in these slides will be accurate or may be accurate, only because it's what I've researched and how I've interpreted. Because I know there's probably going to be experts out there that might see this video and say, you got this completely wrong. Totally understand. But this is how I researched it and how I view the policy and how I'm presenting it. So, okay. But, subscribers, go ahead. Critique me as much as you want in the comments, because the video is probably going to last until I get graded. So, serious time? Serious time. Hello, professor and students, fellow classmates. Today I'm going to be giving my final assessment on the child care policies that are currently in place for the United States military and the United States Navy as a subreddit to the United States military. Because I am in the United States Navy, I have more experience with how our policies work and how some of my sailors have been treated when it comes to child care policies versus how maybe the United States Army or the Marine Corps may fall under their policies, because every policy is different. Even though they might all fall under the same child development centers, each installation is based off the installation that runs that specific child development center. But we are going to go over family care plans and child development center rates and the prices that are put on child care in the modern day and how they just can't support single service member families on their income. It's a policy that definitely needs some looking into. And the facts I'm going to present to you will hopefully induce the thought process of why some of these things need to change. For a presentation overview, I'm going to explain what a family care plan is and why it's important to the United States Navy. I'm also going to show you guys the NAVPERS 1740 Text 6 form, which is a form that all service members must fill out if they have dependents or family members. We'll get into that. I'm going to review the cost of childcare on military installations, specifically geared towards child development centers or CDCs. I'm not going to branch out into off-base child development centers because each one has their different rates and how much they charge families for their services. I'm going to go over the pay and entitlements for service members, what we get paid, what we're entitled to, and some of the allowances that we receive. We're going to do the math. We're going to go back, do some basic math, and just see how the numbers don't really add up into how a single service member can possibly support a family, or even a dual military family can support a family. But for this presentation specifically, I am going to be gearing it towards a single sailor with one child. It could be a single mother, single father, however you want to gear towards it, but mainly gearing it towards single sailor household. Going to go over some issues with on-base child development centers, some of my insights. We are going to look at COVID-19 a little bit and how it's affected child development centers, and then changes that I feel that are necessary in some of these policies that are currently in place with child development centers. So what is a family care plan? A family care plan is essentially a plan that service members must make in order to ensure their dependents are kept safe, healthy, receive the benefits that they're supposed to be receiving, and in an emergency have a place to go. So for example, if I was a single mother, my family care plan would outline all this data. It would outline who their doctor is, who pays for their bills, if they're insured by the military or by a secondary person, who they would be with in the event of emergency. So for example, if a hurricane came to Charleston, South Carolina, my family would have to be evacuated, and the closest relatives I have are in Florida. So part of my family care plan would be to have my child stay in Florida where the hurricane is not affecting that area. That's essentially what a family care plan is. It is a plan for your family. And it also entails that if I were to go on deployment, there is a plan for my family. So me, if I was a single mother, if I had to go on deployment tomorrow, my family care plan lays out the who, what, where, and why of where my child would go, who would have the overall care of my child, and who would, essentially make sure my child's needs are met, and that I would also fund the needs of my child. The responsibility doesn't go onto the person who is taking care of my child. So for example, if I went on deployment, my child would go to my mother in Arizona, but I would give all the pay and entitlements that my child were to receive. Housing costs, care costs, medical costs would go to my mother to ensure that my child is taken care of. That is a family care plan. And family care plans are required if you have dependents. It can even apply to, even if you're just married and have a husband, wife, or partner, however your significant other is titled, they are required to have a plan, because in case of an emergency, if they're a non-military member, they would have to evacuate from that area, where military members would probably be obligated to stay in that area. This is the first page of the family care plan form that a service member will sit down with their chain of command and fill out. It's an acknowledgement that you have been counseled about your family care plan, that it's been reviewed by your chain of command, that you have a solid plan in place. This is a form that you fill out after you've established medical care, educational care, child development centers, all that plan that you have engrossed with your schedule, you have planned for your dependents. The form even goes to state that you understand that you are subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice, or UCMJ for short in the military. That basically means that you are subject to punishment if you fail to properly fill out this document. So if you lie, you are subject to the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is our punitive system and legal system that we as military members fall under. So if you lie on this form, you can get a lot of trouble for it. It also says that individuals who fail to maintain a current family care plan may be subject to separation from the Navy. It's more of a failure to adapt to lifestyle changes and all those circumstances. So if you can't maintain a family care plan or care for your child, the military might actually seek for you to have separation so you can better care for your child. Because in the military, hours are not flexible. Yes, you can work with your chain of command, but there are some places or deployments where you just cannot delineate from that plan, from that mission. Mission is essential. Mission is number one priority. And that's very harsh to say, because everybody's like, no, my family is number one priority. Because trust me, family is number one priority to me 100% of the time. But mission is still crucial. If the mission doesn't get done, then we fail. That's why family care plans are done. That's why these statements and acknowledgments are made by the service member and the chain of command, so that everybody is taken care of. If a ship was out to sea and the family care plan is done correctly and something happens where that ship is home ported, the chain of command at that home port can take care of that family, so the service member doesn't have to worry about it. It's another added benefit of having a family care plan. Commands and the Navy can take care of their sailors' families while they're on deployment out to sea. So this slide is talking about the overall cost of childcare on military installations. This focused primarily on CDCs, or Child Development Centers. Childcare costs on military installations is based on a service member rank and total family income. Now, for all the mathematics that I'm doing, we're focusing on a E3 basic allowance for 4 years or less. So single family sailor, single mom, single dad as an E3 or below, and their income. So the average single sailor making $32,525 a year can expect to pay $1,088 a month for childcare. Now, if we look at the portion that's highlighted here, where I'm going to move my mouse over, this is what we're basing these numbers on that I've come up with for the single family sailor. This $272 full day is the cost for the week. I did do the math and thought that it was almost $300 a day for childcare, and about blew my mind, but it's for the entire week. So a family can expect to pay at least $1,100 a month for childcare alone based off that family income. And of course, the family income can change if it is dual military, if it is multiple incomes in one household. The problem with that is the higher your income, the more you pay. This is a breakdown of military compensation monthly for, of course, an E3 service member or below with 4 years of experience. Their base pay monthly is $2,302.80. If they were to have housing for dependents, they would receive $1,773, and the basic allowance for subsistence at $372.71 is for their basic necessities like food, toiletries, all those consumable necessities that we as individuals can't live without. The military pays for us. So the total income of a military family E3 or below would be $4,448.51. Now, the military compensates you for a lot of things. There are special duty pay, special allowances, uniform allowances, stuff that we do receive from the military that could be incorporated into the overall pay of an annual base salary for a service member, but there's too many of them and too many circumstances to focus on just this one single outcome that I wanted to express. So I didn't add any of those in. So here's where we're going to do the math. We're going to look at that category 1 sailor and base it off of these charts, the military compensation, and then of course the math numbers that I came up with. So an E3 makes $27,633 a year without allowances. That's without basic housing allowance. That's without the allowance for sustenance. That is mainly your base pay, what you are guaranteed. And this is, of course, without taxes taken out, because I didn't want to overcomplicate this because we would have been doing numbers all day. Now, with allowances, a sailor that has BAH and sustenance allowance would make $53,382 a year. And then, of course, I broke it back down to basically over the month. With allowances, they make $4,448.51 in a month. Childcare costs broken down is about $55 a day, $272 a week, $1,088 in a month, and then $13,056 in a year. $13,000 a year for just childcare cost. Now, the childcare cost, I know as some people will say, that includes education, that includes food, that includes, a safe place for my child to be. It is, we pay a lot for our children to have a good quality environment for them to stay while we're out. There are penalties for failing to follow the rules. So this could just be a basic number starting out, but if you're 5 minutes late, you're charged $1 per minute until you pick up that child. So it can get stressful, especially in places where sometimes, work went 5 minutes late, which puts you 10 minutes in traffic, and it just adds up. Those numbers can't add up over time. We're not looking at it specifically for this presentation, but that's something to keep in mind, is that CDCs do charge service members more and more and more for their services than they probably should. And it kind of falls under the ethical, is it morally ethical that if you're running late because you're a service member serving our country, that we're going to charge you $1 a minute until you get here to pick up your child? Granted, you're an hour late, but you still owe us $60 for our time. That's cool. They have to make their money because they're a business, but it's a military-run program. Why are those standards in place? So some issues with child development centers that we have in the military that I've personally seen and had families encounter. They're overcrowded or have no availability for service members to apply. If you are transferring duty stations, it is required that you apply to that following CDC at your next tenant command at least a year in advance, because you get put on a wait list. That's how packed child development centers are. There are always a limited number of facilities or staff. Here, Joint Base Charleston, we have 2 CDCs that assist both the Air Force and the Navy, but it's still not enough. I've had families and single sailors come to me telling me that they don't have enough either financial compensation or there's no room in the CDC for their children, just because of the amount of children that are on military bases, and it's an overcrowding factor. So there is no space and they have to seek off-base CDCs or in-home childcare. Of course, we just talked about the cost for care. I understand the cost for care for children is extensively high. We pay a lot for our children, but for service members, there should be more compensation than what we receive with the amount of money that's coming out of our paychecks monthly to go towards the care of our children. Child development centers are a requirement for single sailors. Unless that single sailor can find somebody to watch their child for a cheaper rate, single service members are almost forced to comply with the CDC and use them as a link or a source for their children. So they're automatically forced into a financial agreement with a military-run program. Sometimes those secondary options are limited. Babysitters, offsite CDC centers have to compete with civilian populations. It is very hard for anybody, even outside of the military, to find adequate childcare for their children because of the job market and because of the cost of living and it increasing and increasing and increasing. Finding childcare and paying for childcare is becoming more of an issue, not just with military families, but with American families in general. Pandemic closures literally messed everything up for us in the United States Navy. Because the CDC had to close due to COVID reasons, I saw firsthand to where our command did care specifically for individuals who had children at home. The parents had to be at home, or children who had single households. They had to make that schedule work. And I do applaud my command for making it work as much as possible, but there were a lot of flack and issues that occurred with women either having babies or some of the women who had children and who had no way of caring for their child aside from the CDC, had to find babysitters, and the chain of command just not listening or caring. And that's not every chain of command. That's not every hierarchies in the military. I'm saying this based off the experience that we had. There were a lot of struggles with single mothers finding childcare for their children and coming to work. It created a lot of stress and trying to manage everything happening with the pandemic. There are people bringing children into the clinic just because they had to work. There was no real support. There wasn't even a shot at possibly having some in-office childcare. Literally, the children weren't allowed to come into our clinic because of the pandemic reasons, but these single mothers had no choice. They had to come to work. They're like, I have nowhere to put my child, and they got slapped with a family care plan saying, hey, your family care plan says that this is what's going to happen. Well, that didn't work out, and then my plan B didn't work out, my plan C didn't work out. So the chain of command wasn't as flexible as they probably should have been during this hard time. Of course, all these issues have been worn out and the CDCs have reopened, but that's pending the future of how this pandemic continues. Who doesn't love to learn about COVID-19? We all know what COVID-19 is. It's an upper respiratory disease that can spread per contact. You can touch a doorknob, you can breathe on somebody, and it spreads through the air based on germs and droplets. That is COVID-19 in a nutshell. Because of COVID-19, military bases have shut down completely. They have reopened here and there, but it depends on the state that you're in. When we completely shut down, it definitely affected the CDC. The CDC completely shut down. It affected in-home care, and also affected the mission completely because of our single sailors having to care for their children versus coming to work. There was definitely a learning curve by all chain of commands to ensure that both the child and the single service member were taken care of in the long run. It forced many people to find an alternate care for their children, or finding people to watch them. And because of the schedule that went on, literally some of the service members were leaving their children with service members who had the day off just to ensure their child was taken care of for the day, which, yes, it's a solution, but it's an unacceptable solution that a service member who just got done with work has to watch a child so another service member can go to work. Changes that I feel need to be made to these policies. There is no allowance for childcare. There are programs out there to help reduce the rate in which the CDC charges military families, but there's a wait list for it. You have to wait for it. You have to qualify for it. The United States government already gives us allowances for almost anything. We get special duty pay, hazard pay, we get housing pay, we get food, we get medical benefits, we get dental, we get clothing allowances once a year, we get all these different types of allowances. Why can't we have a child care allowance? Of course, for qualifying single sailors or dual military families, for children who are not able to go to school themselves, to a public school, so they would have to be in that age range where they require CDC care or specialized care. And of course, for single service members who have no option but to have childcare. Some single sailors, they have no option. They don't have a friend, they don't have a boyfriend, they don't have a significant other, they don't have, their grandma doesn't live in the state, their mom doesn't live in the state, so they have to work. If they don't work, they face the Uniform Code of Military Justice. They face being slapped in the face with a book and standing before the men, as I like to call it, and trying to explain to the commanding officer why they fail to follow their family care plan. Sometimes it is the most stressful aspect of a single sailor's life who has a child, because their child is more important than this job. But the command does not want the service member to see it that way. And then, of course, flexibility with the family care plan during pandemics. There was absolutely no flexibility within our command. While they made it work, it was more of a hazard and a stressor to the service member than it needed to be. Like I said earlier, service members were bringing their children to their place of work primarily because there was no childcare. Once childcare closed for the military, it closed for the entire state. So there were hundreds, if not thousands of families trying to find alternative means to provide for their children. And then, of course, people were out of work. It created chaos, absolute chaos. I feel that there needs to be more policies that fit towards pandemic reasons or to issues like this to help support children. Most military installations don't have in-care facilities. They use the CDC, for example, to provide for military families, but they provide for a broad range of families, and there's just not enough. There's not enough CDCs, there's not enough areas for families to provide that care for their children when they have no choice in some cases. Sometimes they don't have a stay-at-home mom or dad. They have to go to work. They have to provide care for their children. So why doesn't the military provide that excess care, if only for a substantial amount of time, for 4 years, for this time frame to this time frame? We're going to give you an allowance if you qualify and apply for it to pay for that child care, and it goes straight to the CDC. Honestly, the amount of money that a single service member has to pay for child care is a little outrageous in my mind. $13,000 a year just in child care costs, not including the feeding, the clothing, the everything that that child needs to live normally without child care. It's an outrageous number. So those are the changes that I feel need to occur with these policies. If there are any questions, leave me some questions. I'll be happy to answer them. I hope that I explained it well enough for everybody to understand, and hopefully I made it somewhat engaging and semi-entertaining for everybody in the class. That is the end of my presentation, professor and classmates. I hope to have a great discussion on this while the next week. When we finish up this class, we all get A's, we all celebrate, we move on to the next one. Yes? Yes? Okay. And of course, these are my references where I found everything. The housing calculators, the military one source, family care plans, the form. That's where that all is. So thank you everybody for sitting around for my presentation. I hope it was semi-mildly entertaining, and all my subscribers, just deal with it. Okay. Love you guys. Bye.